All right. Hello, everybody. This is our coaching call for the FY27 Folk and Traditional Arts Project Support Grant. My name is Krista Grenza. I am the grants coordinator of the grants team here at the Arts Commission. I am joined by my grants team coworker, Trinity Howell, our assistant grants coordinator, and by C. Scott Fitz, one of our deputy directors, and Haley Yazinski, our new arts industry manager who oversees this grant. So I am going to share my screen. Oh, and also, since this is in a webinar format, if you have any questions throughout, please put it in the Q&A box and we'll keep an eye on that. Well, share my screen. Can everybody see that? All right.
It looks good.
All right. And just as a reference, this is, of course, our lovely website on southcarolinaarts.com for the grant guidelines. Um, if you ever need to get back here, it is under the grants page here, under all grants, this little card here on here. But yeah, Haley, you want to take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome, everyone. As Krista mentioned, my name is Haley Yasinski, and I am the new arts industry manager. We're just going to walk through the Folklife and Traditional Arts Project guidelines, eligibility, who can apply, and some of the important details related to that. So starting off at the very top of the page, you can see we have a big snapshot of what this grant is under the grant information as well as the key dates. The purpose of this grant is to ensure that South Carolina's diverse living traditions remain vibrant and visible parts of community life. Most South Carolina nonprofit organizations, colleges, and universities and units of government are eligible to apply for this grant and receive funding, as well as the funding scenario. You can receive up to $6,000 within a fiscal year for your folk life and traditional arts related project. And it is a one-to-one match, meaning you would provide up to $6,000 worth of funding, and the Arts Commission would match that number depending on your award amount. If you look to the right, we have our key dates section. The application is currently open, as you can see by this green oblong shape up here, and it does close on April 23rd, 2026 at 11:59 Eastern Standard Time. This is a hard close date, so please make sure you complete and submit your application by that time. And the grant period, meaning whatever you're applying for, must occur between July 1st, 2026 and end by May 31st, 2027 in order for you to complete your final report and submit all of that important information to us. We can scroll down to about this grant. I've received a couple calls and emails from people regarding this grant. Hopefully, y'all were able to jump on this. If not, you'll be able to access the recording later. And I really want to focus on what we are defining folk life and traditional arts specifically for this grant as. It's this top paragraph under about this grant. It says traditional arts are expressions of shared identity that are learned as a part of the cultural life of a particular group. This shared identity may be rooted in family, geographic, tribal, occupational, religious, or ethnic connections, among others. As expressions of a living culture, traditional arts have been handed down from one generation to the next and reflect the shared experience, aesthetics, and values of a group. Traditional arts are dynamic, reflecting change and individual innovation over generations of practitioners. As we mentioned, the purpose of the grant is to make sure that our living traditions in the state are remaining vibrant by supporting nonprofits and units of government to sustain and promote traditional arts practices across the state. Our cultural landscape encompasses diverse artistic traditions and practitioners, including indigenous, longstanding, and more recently arrived art forms and communities. All right, we can scroll down to the eligibility. This is a very important part, especially if you have not received a grant from us before. We are a state agency, meaning we receive funds from the state government and the federal government to provide to y'all. So we have some more restrictions than a foundation or a private funding entity would have. For this grant, applicants must be at least one of the following: a state or unit of state or local government. So that could be a county, city, that could be an agency within the South Carolina government, a college or university, or a nonprofit organization. And if you're a nonprofit organization, you must fulfill the three bullets underneath that, meaning that you're registered as a charity with the South Carolina Secretary of State's office. You are reflecting South Carolina as the primary address of all of your organizational documents, and you are federally tax exempt. You have the status from the IRS, or you're applying through a tax exempt fiscal agent or receiver. Additionally, you must have a unique entity ID, which you can get through, um, what is it, sam.gov. It's different from a EIN. Make sure you have both of those things ready for your application. And of course, commissioners and staff of the South Carolina Arts Commission and members of their immediate family are not eligible to apply for individual SCAC programs, grants, fellowships, or services that provide financial support or career recognition. We also want to ensure that you are providing materials that are complying with state and federal laws. We, as I mentioned, are a state entity, so we must follow the obscenities clause, which means obscene content is strictly prohibited in grant applications and a proposed project activities. Applications that may include materials or activities determined to be obscene will not be reviewed or considered for funding. All right, we can go down to the restrictions part. So like most of our project grants, you're only able to submit one folk and traditional arts project grant per fiscal year. So this application would be for the FY27 fiscal year. You would pick one project that you would complete between July 1st, 2026 and May 31st, 2027. College and university departments are eligible, but only one application is accepted per department. If you have multiple people that are working on the same project or different projects in different areas, it might be a good idea to combine your project ideas if you're in the same department. If you're in different departments, then that is a different scenario and you don't have to worry about that. All right, use of funds. Eligible expenses. So these are all of the things that this grant is able to cover. It can cover the presentation of traditional artists through workshops, concerts, festivals, exhibitions, radio programs, recordings, and more. It must result in some sort of a public presentation, as mentioned in this next bullet point, which says documentation of traditional arts and or folk life of South Carolina. Again, it must result in some sort of public presentation through programming or access to archived materials. It also covers cultural surveys, which we define as field work done to identify traditions and traditional artists. It covers production, documentation, and or distribution of a traditional artist's work. For example, the production of publicity materials, also covering acquisition of difficult to obtain materials or equipment needed to create traditional art. A lot of traditional art means that you're having to source either some sort of leather or specifically grown material that can be a little expensive or hard to obtain. That is able to be funded with this as well. And finally, projects that preserve a traditional art form, such as apprenticeships or classes. You are not eligible to use these funds for, well, including but not limited to, interpretations of interpretive traditional art, as opposed to the practice of an actual traditional art form, revivals of traditions that have ceased to exist within the originating culture, general oral history projects, projects that are limited to historical focus, and projects that present historical recreations of past lifestyles. The main reason for this limitation on history is that that's seen as a humanity practice, and the South Carolina Arts Commission is only able to fund things that are related to the arts. Those projects are important and important to preserve. These funds just are not able to do that. Additional requirements. The main requirement that we're asking for is for your primary contact. The primary contact that's listed in the grant application should be and must be the main point of contact through the application process and if awarded during the grant period. Um, Sometimes we have people that get new jobs or get promoted and are no longer under that. That is something that you at the time would contact the grants office about, noting that you will no longer be at the organization or no longer be over that role, and then give us a new primary contact in order for your grant funds to stay intact for the project. As we mentioned in the second paragraph, the primary contact will be responsible for all communications with the SCAC, including responding to inquiries, providing updates, and submitting required documentation. Failure to adhere to this requirement may result in disqualification from the grant process or revocation of awarded funds. All right, priority section. Thank you. We have a handful of opportunity initiative counties that we have identified that get priority for these projects. Our current SCAC Opportunity Initiative counties are Allendale, Bamberg, Calhoun, Edgefield, Hampton, Lee, Marlborough, Saluda, Union, and Williamsburg. There's a separate section at the bottom of your application where you can check off if you're located in one of those counties. All right, deadline and grant period. I touched on this a little bit before. Deadline is the 23rd of April, 2026. Applications must be submitted and by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the deadline date. Please note that the office closes at 5 p.m. daily. So if you have a question that night after 5 p.m., or if you have any technical difficulties regarding your application, we might not get to it in time. So I really encourage you to apply before the deadline, or if you have any questions, reach out to us before that deadline occurs. And the grant period will be for projects that occur between July 1st, 2026 and May 31st, 2027. Our funding and match is again up to $6,000. And as I mentioned, we are again a state agency. So oftentimes we get some federal funding that is used towards your grant award. If it is, we will let you know that you're receiving federal dollars. And if you do receive federal dollars for this award, your match is not able to consist of federal funding, whether that's through a separate grant that also uses federal funds, or a separate project, again, related to federal funds. Grantees may receive up to 80% of the total grant award prior to final report. The way that this happens is that you would contact myself as well as the grant office, just to let us know, hey, this is what we're looking to do. Can we have a prior disbursement of our award funds? We would either approve or ask you for more information, or it won't be approved. And you're able to receive up to 80% of that before your final report. The rest of the funds will be reimbursed at the receipt and approval of your final report. For matching requirements, again, one-to-one, up to $6,000 from you as the grantee and up to $6,000 from us. It will depend on what your actual award amount is, but at least 50% of the applicant's match must be in cash, and funds, again, cannot be matched using another grant that you're getting from us or from federal funding. This is probably one of the most important parts, besides completing and submitting the application, but looking at the grant criteria. This is what our reviewers use when they are evaluating your application. Each section aligns with the application, and you want to aim for this third column, um, answer-wise. That's middle of the row. Good answer. If you want to exceed and get more points, aim for the fourth. Um, yeah, as Krista highlighted. Yeah, so it's very easy to follow along. We really recommend having the rubric up in either a separate tab or printed out while you're doing your application so you can see what we're looking for, what your answers should explain and dive into, as well as what it's actually going to be scored as. Again, this is what our reviewers use. Our grants are not scored against each other. It's only scored against the rubric. So please, please, please make sure that you use this resource. We have it up for you to use. We don't want anything to be a secret. So please use this. And if you have any questions, once the review process is done, please reach out to us for comments about your application that were left by the reviewers, and we're happy to help in that way. All right, how to apply. We try to make this as simple as a process as possible. All of our grant applications are submitted through the Foundant platform, which is specifically for grants. You will log into your grant portal or create an account if you haven't before. We have a grants portal FAQ section on our website that will bring you to a section of questions like, how do I get access to my account? Or what happens if I get logged out? So definitely refer to that. If you have any big technical difficulties, please reach out to our grants department. They're in charge of that system and they can help you in that aspect more than I can. Let's see, let's go over, yes, AI in your application. So this is a new kind of language that we have for all of our grants. As we all know, generative AI is part of the world. A lot of people use it, and we want to ensure that AI is being used in a way that's appropriate and acceptable, while valuing the work that you do and the reviewers do. Also, for background, our reviewers are not allowed to use generative AI to evaluate your application. They must do that on their own. But for you as an applicant, our AI disclosure and acceptable use policies are currently as follows. Generative AI must not be used for the creation of proposed artwork or for generating work samples. AI may be used for editing, proofreading, or improving the clarity and quality of narrative text. A lot of people use Grammarly, which is a fairly reliable resource. However, if you use an AI tool to help write or edit your application, you are doing so at your own risk. When we receive a grant application, it's our understanding that it reflects the applicant's original ideas, voice, and intent. You remain fully responsible for the content, accuracy, and integrity of your application, including any material created or revised with the assistance of AI. If we identify falsely fabricated or misleading information in a grant application, including information produced by the use or through the use of AI, the SCAC reserves the right to remove the grant from consideration, or if awarded, to cancel the grant and invoice the grantee for any funds that have been received. If AI is used inappropriately or in violation of this policy, the SCAC reserves the right to remove the grant from consideration, or if awarded, to cancel the grant and invoice the grantee for any funds received. And finally, all applicants must ensure that their applications, proposed projects, and all related materials, including information produced through the use of AI, comply with all applicable federal, state, and local laws. Applying for this grant indicates that you, the applicant, agree to the terms of this policy. Like I said, this is something new. This is what we are currently doing with AI, and it can change in the past. For this application, these are the guidelines regarding generative AI. All right, we can jump down to supplemental information. So just going over what we will need in addition to your application. So the application, you'll talk about what you're going to do, talk about the artists or art organization that you're choosing to work with, for research, presentation. You will also have a section towards the bottom of your application to submit work samples and support materials. Work samples are a required part of your application, and they are actual pieces, photos, videos, etc., that represent artists and traditions featured in your project. Work samples help the reviewers assess the quality of your proposed program, its potential impact on the tradition and communities involved, and your application's capacity to complete the project. We encourage you to be selective when choosing your work samples, and the work samples, keep in mind, should reflect the work of the artist or the project that you're proposing. Work samples should, one, demonstrate traditionality and cultural significance as understood by the community in which the traditional art forms are practiced. Two, represent the traditional art forms featured in your project. And three, have been created within the past 5 years. So as long as it was made on or after January 1st, 2021, that is something that we would see as a recent and viable work sample. For work sample instructions, we strongly encourage you to prepare your work samples before you visit the grants portal and begin your application. It's just helpful planning-wise for you and can help guide some of your answers in the narrative, the grant narrative. You must submit at least 2 work samples and no more than 5 of them. Also keep in mind if you are submitting an audio sample, like a reading of a presentation or a podcast that you're doing on folk and traditional art, or even a video, reviewers will review no more than 20 minutes of content per application, just to for the sake of time and to keep everything rolling. To submit work samples, you must provide a URL or link where the work sample can be viewed. The work samples must be accessible without login credentials for the platform. So pretty much don't submit a private link. If it is private, make sure it is either public facing or a public link. For example, if you're linking to even a YouTube video, make sure it's public and that people don't have to sign in to see it. You might have to create a new electronic file like a PDF, MP3, MP4 file that meets the length, content, and formatting requirements. And for the work sample, it's important, as we do with everything, to cite our sources. So please cite the name of the artist or people that are involved, identify everyone that was relevant to the project that had worked on it. Or if it's a company, for example, like a dance company or a theater company, listing the name of the company and then as well as the artistic director. The title of the piece, year created, location, if you know where it was either displayed, produced, or performed, the total runtime of the piece, and then tying back into the reviewers will only review 20 minutes of your provided work samples. Please provide a start and end time stamp for the portion you want them to review. And then also give us a short sentence describing the work and its relationship to the project. For support materials, these are different forms of documentation that show that you have the necessary skills, resources, and capacity to complete the proposed project. And again, you can submit up to 5 support materials for this, and it's important to be selective and deliberative while you're choosing these. These are not required, but sometimes reviewers like to see that show of support. Your support materials can include, but are not limited to, letters of support from people on your board, in the community, those that are very involved with your organization, samples of media coverage like newspaper or magazine articles, programs or other ephemera from previous similar projects, or brief publications or publication excerpts. Support materials may be uploaded, or you may provide a link to the support materials. If providing a link, the support materials must be accessible without login credentials for that platform, such as the work samples. If you have any questions about what a support material is, what a work sample is, what we would consider each to be, or if you have any issues uploading them, again, please reach out to us and we're happy to help. All right. And then, yes, after you apply, oh, so I've mentioned a few times we have reviewers that are looking at your application and using that rubric, that grant criteria, to give you a certain score on your application. So first, before it gets to the reviewers, your application will be sent to the grants team, and they review applications for completion and compliance with guidelines and application requirements. Incomplete or non-compliant applications will not be able to move on to evaluation. So it's really important that you have the correct information in your budget, the correct information in your narrative, and that you have all of those, all the correct documentation showing your EIN, your UEI, and depending on the organization you're applying with, that founding information. And then once it passes through the grants team, it will go on to evaluation, where we have external grant reviewers evaluate and complete applications. Well, evaluate complete applications based on the published review criteria, which is, as you can see in the grant criteria drop-down section right above. Makes it really easy. Again, please use that while you're writing your application for the most guidance. Reviewer comments are available to applicants upon request. So if you did really well on your application, you can get feedback on, you know, what the reviewers thought aligned best with the rubric. If you did not do as well, we can also give you that information. And then down to awarding. Award decisions are based on applicant scores and the availability of funds. Award approvals are made by the SEAC Board of Commissioners. We have board meetings about once a quarter where these awards are approved, and award notifications are expected following the June 2026 board meeting. If you receive a grant award, there's a whole process that goes into that as well. We first will make sure that you receive a contract with us where we outline the terms of the grant award, how much you will be awarded, the timeline for that, and all parties agreed to comply with all applicable federal, state, and local laws, statutes, regulations, executive orders, provisions, and requirements stated in the contract. You'll receive the notification and instructions when your contract is available in the grants portal. Usually that notification will come through as an email, so make sure you are checking your email inbox. If you're not seeing that come through, check your junk mail. It usually doesn't go through junk, but doesn't hurt to double check. You must submit your completed contract packet, including the signatures and other documentation as instructed by the date indicated in the system. You must also complete all other assigned follow-ups by the due date. Please note that any significant revisions to grant-funded activities must be approved in writing in advance by the SCAC. Significant revisions to grant-funded activities must be emailed to grants@arts.sc.gov to be processed for approval or denial. Again, it plays into the application that you wrote, the narrative, and what was scored. If there's a big change, whether that is the date that the project will take place, we'll have to adjust that so that your final report can be due in time. Or if the matter of or content of the project changes, we have to know about that so we can approve or deny it and make sure that it stays within the bounds of the application. Additional details about managing an SCAC grant are available on our agency website, which is right here. And then grantees must request or may request interim payments up to 80% of the total grant award. Any remaining amount of the grant award will be released upon the receipt and approval of the final report. I mentioned the final report a few times in here as well, so we will get into that. All grantees are required to submit a final report at the end of the grant period. The final report due date is stated in the grant contract, and it usually falls about 4-ish weeks after your project is complete. Failure to submit an accurate and complete final report by the due date will result in cancellation of the award and repayment of any funds received. SCAC will not fund applicants who have outstanding final reports. Delinquency grantee communication policy. Definition of
Oh,
delinquency. Or Krista, do you want to
yeah,
get
I
into
can touch
that?
on that just kind
Okay,
of for the sake of time. For
sure.
um, this is very much our good faith outreach and our if for whatever reason you have an outstanding report, final report with us, our process. Um, if for whatever reason you do not submit your final report or respond to any of our updates, emails, and trying to reach out to you, we will have a good faith outreach and uh, first trying to notify you via email and phone within a certain amount of days. After that, we will send you another email saying final notice. And finally, if after that, after almost 30 days or 25 days since the initial delinquency, um, that unless we receive a response, we will cancel the grant. Um, this can impact eligibility for future SEAC funding. So that is why it's important for you all to check your email frequently from us and make sure none of our emails are going into spam folders, and for uh, you to respond quickly back to us and to make sure to file final reports on time. Um, but if for whatever reason you need an extension on your final report, it's June of 2027 and a hurricane has come through, please let us know. We will probably know about that, but please let us know. We understand that uh, medical items pop up, natural disasters occur, organizational crisis. We understand those happen, but we need to know in order not to cancel your grant. And I can move on into the portal if you're ready for that, Haley. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of skipped down to the evaluation and rewarding section before we got around to the
no, no,
foundant
no.
spot. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so um, to begin your application, you can click here to apply. This will take into your login page. I won't click it right now since it will log me out. But you'll click this, you'll either log in or create your account for your organization. And we'll take you to a very similar page. It will look different for you and within the applicant portal. This is just from my view currently, but all this information will largely be the same. So it will have different sections, and depending on your choices within the application, such as whether you're applying as a nonprofit, a college or university, government, etc., different parts of the application will appear. So it is important that you click the right items and make sure they are accurate, um, and that the right branching logic is appearing. How long? I see. Um, Naomi, how long does an account stay with the SE Arts Commission? The unless you specifically ask us to deactivate it, it will always remain in the portal. We do not deactivate accounts or organizations. So if you created an account a while ago, you should be able to still log back in. If you have trouble logging in for whatever reason, please let us know and we can either reset your password or update your email as needed, but it will stay live. We do not deactivate anything. But good question. And within here is where you will be typing all your narrative for all the questions that are outlined in the rubric. Um, and I will briefly touch on the budget here. But before that, as we said before, the grant criteria or rubric questions are exactly the same as what we are asking in the application. So cultural community, we have in here a cultural community question. So a good idea is to either download it or have it side by side, such as, I don't know if I can do it with my shared screen right now, but have it side by side as you're working on it. But just, the budget, which we get a lot of questions about. We have updated the budget form. So if you are reapplying for this grant, it may look a little different from previous years. But this will be the same information that we have stated before. Please, for any items listed, please provide an itemized list of what you're paying for. Be as specific as possible. You are paying Jane Smith and John Smith for their drumming session at $20 an hour. Those are your musician fees. That's what we're kind of looking for. And you'll download this budget sheet. Okay, so this is our lovely budget sheet. It is not intimidating as it looks. Um, you'll select the correct match, which will be not 1 to 2, but 1 to 1. There's a drop down. And this is just a placeholder, so do not be thrown off by the 2,500. You will type in 6,000. And it's important that these items are correct and match what is listed in both the application and the guidelines, so everything calculates correctly. So this is where you'll put all your expenses, the totals for those expenses, and everything will automatically calculate. So you will not have to add up anything on your own. It'll do it automatically. And based on your expenses, it will show you how much you are eligible to receive based on your total and the maximum request for this category. Down here in the income section, you will list where your match is coming from. So any other funding that is going into this project, whether it's federal, state funds, out-of-pocket cash that you have, any other support that you might be receiving from foundations, donations, etc., will be listed here. If you have any in kind, it will be automatic. 50% is allowed to be your 50% of your match may be in kind. It will automatically calculate as such based on that. You will list that here, and we ask you to be specific there as well. So if you have, again, 20 volunteers at 10 hours, $200, please list that. Or you're being donated 20 reams of paper for this. We would like to know that as well specifically. It will automatically calculate your income to show what your total is and if you have a surplus or deficit or a balance. And we do need to see a balance or a surplus in order for the budget to be considered complete. We will review this once you submit it. So if for whatever reason we see a deficit or descriptions are missing from here, we will reach out to you and ask for more information before it is moved to panel. And I just want to touch on this use of funding section. This will be for your budget. We want to see your entire project budget of what is happening for this entire project. If you were putting on a concert, and you have venue rental, musician fees, conductor fees, you're putting on you have to pay for lights, ticketing, etc. What is our funding specifically going towards? So our $6,000 would be going towards musician fees. We would like to know specifically what that money would be going towards. And here is just a little checklist for your reference, making sure that you've entered everything correctly and a good place for you to double check your work. I'll touch on the work samples and support materials really quickly. Haley covered them pretty well, but if you have any questions or any difficulties in either uploading or providing a link for any of your work samples or support materials, any supplemental information, please reach out to the grants team at grants@arts.sc.gov, and we can help you either create a link or figure out what the best way to approach whatever difficulty you're facing with that. And this last part here is just certifying that you agree to all our policies, you're not debarred from receiving funding, et cetera, et cetera. And that is our lovely application. We did touch on evaluation awarding, yes. If anybody else has any questions, I will stop sharing my screen. And yeah. If you have any more questions, we can touch on that.
I just saw a question that says, speaking of workshops and classes, can grant money be used for refreshments during the sessions? Unfortunately, we're not able to fund any food or beverage purchases with grant money. It must be used towards the workshop or the class itself for purchasing materials.
We do have on the website the things that are restricted. Maybe if you want to pull that up and do a share screen and maybe show that little area where it talks about the restrictions, that might be helpful.
I currently cannot find the right page, but I will try to find it in a moment. But that is a general rule for all grants of us. I don't believe it's specifically listed within the Folklife guidelines, but across the board for Arts Commission grants, food, beverages, per diems, catering expenses are not allowable. Um, but good question.
Yes, as well as using funds. You're not allowed to use it for fundraising activities or reselling goods, lobbying, any like capital expenses, scholarships, endowment funds. Um, yeah, it should be a direct cost, which we define as something that's directly related to the arts, like artist fees, program supplies, um, yeah, all the
Art
good stuff.
materials. Yeah.
Yeah, art
Yeah.
materials. Yeah.
If you have any questions about any other allowable or unallowable fund use of funds, please reach out to us. Sometimes there are areas that are gray, and we are more than happy to discuss that with you. But if there are no more questions, thank you everybody who joined the call. Again, this will be recording will be available on our website um, after this in hopefully a short while. But if you have any programmatic questions related to the narrative, questions in the application, or work samples that are best suited for the application, please reach out to Haley. I will drop her email is hyasinski@arts.se.gov. Um, it is also available on the guidelines. Please reach out to her. If you have any technical questions or questions about how to name the budget spreadsheet, the portal, the website, please reach out to the grants team at grants@arts.se.gov. We are more than happy to help. But thank you all again so much for joining us, and we look forward to receiving and reviewing your applications.